Hey guys, it's Philip here at Movies and More. I am so excited to bring this to you. We have Darren Aronofsky talking about The Whale. He is joined by Samuel D. Hunter, who is the screenwriter of the film. He wrote the play on which the film is based, and they are joined by Hong Chau, who's one of the co-stars of the film, delivers an absolutely incredible performance. Of course, nothing can compare to what Brendan Fraser did with this role, but the two of them together is truly something to be seen. The film is in theaters on December 9th, so if you get a chance to see it on the big screen, I absolutely recommend it. Yes, there are some spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, stop watching until after you've seen the film. Because Brendan Fraser was supposed to be there, he was feeling under the weather, wasn't able to make it, but he does join in, and it's really clever the way they pulled that off. So make sure you watch, and if you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up and like it. It really helps me out. And hey, subscribe so you don't miss any more of these in the future. Thanks so much, and enjoy a special Q&A for The Whale.
In the meantime, my name is Stacey Wilson-Hunt, and let's bring out three incredible people who helped to make this film, starting with writer Samuel Hunter, actor Hong Chau, she's so good, and director and producer Darren Aronofsky. Welcome to you, and just congratulations and thank you so much for making this movie. I know it's not easy, especially a movie like this, so just want to say thanks. It's always a miracle every time we get to see something. Samuel, I want to start with you. I don't think writers get enough credit, so I'm going to start with you this time. And I would like for you to tell us what inspired this story, which of course was a play starting in 2012 that you adapted yourself for the screen. But I want to go back to the initial story, the germ of this idea, and where it was born in you.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having us. But I started writing it quite a while ago, 12, 13 years ago. At the time, like Charlie, I was teaching essay writing to college freshmen, and this was in a state school in New Jersey where it was like a state requirement. They had to take it, and so they hated it, and they hated me, and
Sounds typical, right?
Yeah. But it paid better than teaching theater courses in the city. So it was like $5,000 a course, which was so much better than like teaching Theater 101 to the football team at Fordham. But I found it was a really difficult course for me to teach because it felt anathema to everything that I wanted to do as a writer. I was asking them to take themselves out of the writing, to be objective and clear, and so at a certain point in the semester, I kind of rebelled against the syllabus that I had been given, and I started, like Charlie, begging my students to write something honest, at least just start there. And I had a student write me a line that ended up in the play and eventually the movie, which was, I think I need to accept that my life isn't going to be very exciting. And it was this really stark moment of honesty that kind of hit me like a bus. And I remember on those like long rides back from New Jersey on New Jersey Transit, I just started thinking like, can I write a play about an expository writing teacher? I mean, and it seemed like a weird place to start. And I found I had a lot of trouble. I started writing something that bared no resemblance to this movie, that just really wasn't working. It was too intellectual. It was too up in the air. And then I thought, well, there's some stuff in my own life. Talking about writing from an honest place, there's stuff in my own life that I haven't yet accessed in my writing, or really like talked about much in my life to that point. About growing up gay in Idaho. I attended a fundamentalist Christian school. It was very similar to the church that Thomas talks about. I was outed in the 11th grade and had to leave. And I think when I left, I had this myth that I was like, oh, I'm okay now. Everything's fine. Like I'm out of the closet. Like it's fine. But I hadn't processed it fully or even partially. And that, for me, my specific story was that resulted in depression and years of self-medicating with food.
So when you told your students to write something honest, you kind of had to force yourself to
had
take
to
your
take the
own
same
assignment.
Yeah. And it kind of, that was like 15 plays ago for me now, and it kind of set me on a journey of like writing plays that are really kind of earnest and accessing something that may be difficult for me to write about or talk about, but come from a personal place. So yeah, and then eventually I almost didn't even take it off my hard drive just because it felt so different than my other writing that I had done up until that point. It also felt so deeply unfashionable in terms of like what I was saying in like off-Broadway stages. And so when I finally did start showing it to people, it felt very vulnerable. But I'm glad I did, because eventually it was produced first at the Denver Theater Center and then in New York where Darren saw it. And that was 10 years ago.
That's so amazing and so inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. And Darren, I was interested to see that you have called this film your most hopeful, which I find interesting, considering the end and sort of the drama that we get to experience. But I do also see what you mean, actually. But I want to go back to when you were in the audience and you first saw this performed, and what did you feel when you were watching the play?
I remember it very clearly. Like, I think it hopefully was similar to the experience everyone had tonight, which was these characters appear that seem so different, and all of these different prejudices pop into your head, and then scene by scene, they're slowly stripped away as your heart melts for Charlie. And by the end of the play, I was just so moved that these characters could reach me. And I realized, isn't that kind of what cinema is all about? It's great movie is an empathy machine where you can be transported to anywhere in the world, to any character in the world, and if they have true and honest emotions, you can be taken on this incredible journey where you learn the specifics of their reality, but you realize they're not so different than yourself. And that was the beauty of Sam's Charlie. And I felt like this awesome responsibility and an honor that he gave me the rights to try to bring Charlie to the screen, to share him with the world.
I'm so glad he did. Thank you. And Hong, my God, what a performance. Really incredible work. Again, as always. And Darren, you mentioned empathy, and it's so funny you bring that up because I think Roger Ebert used to talk about that all the time, about he was just so amazing about how movies teach us empathy because we get to live in other people's lives, whose lives we would never, otherwise know. And I read a review of The Whale, which was a positive review, that said the film requires insistent empathy from the audience. And I really like the phrasing of that. And Hong, I would like for you to talk a little bit about how you infused that edict into your performance, because as troubled as she is, she's insisting that the entire time we stick with her, we stick with the story when it's hard to watch and we feel so bad, but she's forcing us to stick with her on that journey. So tell us about your journey and bringing her to life.
I read the script, and first of all, I was just so bowled over by the writing. It's so unusual to see that much dialogue, to see a monologue that goes on for pages and pages in a film script. So I knew that this film would be very different and ambitious in terms of the emotion. A lot of the times the ambitiousness of a story is through some sort of big stunt or some big set piece, and this was really just about people sitting in a room talking to each other. And it was challenging in that Sam wrote this best friend character who's not your typical best friend. She's mean, but she's funny about it. She's caring, but she's caustic. She's exhausted, but she's incredibly reliable. And it was such a joy as an actor to be able to calibrate and dial in all of those different contradictory qualities about her. In reading the script, I analyzed it and sort of knew that Liz was there to give the audience a glimpse into who Charlie was prior to us meeting him for the first time in the story. And so I knew my job was to go in there and befriend the hell out of Brendan Fraser. And so, it was about finding those playful moments and the joy and the love in their friendship. And during that rehearsal period, it was about trying to be physical and touching him, and that's where all the titty twisting came in.
Wish we had more time to delve into that.
And then it was also about thinking about who Liz was and what she had gone through and how similar it was to Charlie, but she's
also marginalized and has never felt like she fits in.
Yeah. The character wasn't written as specifically Asian in the stage play. It was played by a white actress, and once I was cast, they added in the line about her being adopted. So I thought a bit about that. I grew up in Louisiana, but at least, it was in an immigrant and a Vietnamese immigrant and refugee community, but Liz was, probably the only.
I've been to Moscow, Idaho. I know what it's like. Yeah. Not a lot of diversity there.
Yeah, so I just figured, Liz probably had some wild child days, and I asked Darren if I could have some tattoos, and he said yes. And Judy Chin, our wonderful makeup artist, every morning would just put on tattoos on both of my arms and on the back of my neck. You don't really see them in the movie, but it was there for me, and it just felt really special that this production would spend the time and the money on something like that.
It's such a great detail. Thank you for sharing that. And Samuel, you had never written a film script before. What aspects of the technical process of writing a movie script were the most difficult in terms of a learning curve? And what structural changes beyond the obvious, translating a play to the screen, did you make? And I was actually intrigued to know that the pizza delivery guy character doesn't exist in the play. So tell me a little bit about some of the structural additions or subtractions that you made.
Yeah, I would say that structurally it's pretty much identical. The way the story falls out is pretty much identical. But that being said, every scene is very, very different. And there are so many scenes both in the play that are not in the film and vice versa. I had the idea, I'm pretty sure it was during the pandemic, for the second bedroom, the Allen bedroom. Because in the play, basically the way it falls out is Charlie gives this big monologue to Thomas about Allen and his history with Allen. And then we kind of get the same monologue reciprocated later. And we realize, they're talking about the same person. But in this one, I was like, what if there's no Charlie monologue? What if this is something we can tell visually with that bedroom and that Bible, which are not the Bible is not in the play. So yeah, and to your point, the pizza delivery guy is not in the play. The bird is not in the play. And then all those silent scenes of like Charlie Googling or Charlie just being with himself in the evening. None of those were in the play. But I think generally speaking, in the beginning, I was sort of halfway expected Darren to do that kind of traditional thing of like, how can we open this up? How can we add flashbacks? How can we add characters? How can we add scenes? And I remember early on, I was like, I don't think it wants that, but also I've never written a movie before, so what do I know? Maybe I'm just stuck in my playwright brain. But in one of our first meetings, Darren was like, let's keep it in the apartment. And I was like, oh, wow, here we go. And
that surprised you that he was?
Oh, it really surprised me. It was a wonderful surprise, because I was like, good, because I don't know how to tell this story by leaving this guy. We just I think other plays you can open up, but this story is like, you just want to be with this person, and there's really not a reason to leave him. But I think it's a testament to Darren and his incredible. There are very few directors that could pull this off. Very, very few, and you pulled it off so beautifully.
Well, and on that note, perfect segue to my next question for Darren, the technical challenges you faced, and you are a filmmaker who has never shied away from large challenges in terms of telling stories, but I have to imagine that something this insular and I guess contained may have been more challenging than some of your larger pieces, and if so, tell me in what ways.
Well, the first challenge was if we could make this film. We cast it and did a read-through of the script in February 2020, and we got all excited about Brendan Fraser in this role, and then of course what happened, and then everyone, the New York crew, was really anxious to work, and I started to get phone calls, and the guilds had all come together to figure out how to do things sort of safely, but I was still seeing all these productions shutting down for 2-3 weeks when there was an extra who got someone infected, and then it was before the vaccine, so it was still very dangerous, and we didn't really understand it. But it seemed like 5 actors in one location, shooting in a kind of warehouse in upstate New York, away from the big city, could be a safe way to do it. And the producers ended up pulling it off without anyone getting sick, which was great. And but I think that all films, no matter the size, have very, very similar challenges. But what was exciting about this one is for myself, I didn't have to worry about a lot of things you normally have to worry about. And I really got to focus on the text, the performers, and where to put the camera. And sort of returning to that kind of very, very simple place was exciting, because in many ways, that's the majority of the art. Yeah, not worrying about time. I mean, of course, there was a bigger question about time, but like shooting in one location is a beautiful thing, because if you run out of time, you can just come back tomorrow, which normally, like by
losing daylight.
Yeah.
Right.
By 5 o'clock, you're always like, oh shit, I got 8 more shots. How am I going to get out of here? See if it was possible, because people living with obesity have been portrayed in films before, but it's always kind of either as an evil character or as a punchline. They're never real human beings, and thus the makeup is often cut from foam or pillows, and is no way attempting reality. But once again we're trying to bring people into Charlie's existence and what it's like to be Charlie. So realism was super important. But the second rule, once Adrian said, yeah, I think there's some new technologies, there's some new materials that we can do something really exciting, was I don't want any prosthetics on his face. So basically, Adrian came up with something that goes up to the chin and then wraps around the sides of the face, but not a single wrinkle or crease on Brendan's face was touched, so that he could fully use his entire range of emotion. But there were other problems. So like if he got very emotional and heated, how your face would turn red, but of course the prosthetics don't turn red. So, then we kind of invented and hand-built a kind of a cooling suit, like what the F1 drivers wear, which was like a bodysuit with like cold water piping through. But then, he was sweating, and then suddenly he was shivering, and it was just an endless complication of that. But I picked the right actor, the one who would be able to technically stay centered and ignore all the artists fluttering in his face as he was getting ready for a scene. And then when it was time to call action, he had the emotional wherewithal to pull out all those different feelings.
He is just so good. I'm so I'm proud of him. It sounds weird, but I think we grew up watching him, and it's just so stunning. I wish he were here, but we love you, Brendan. Hong,
we can call him.
We can call him.
He's a little under the weather. I'll try.
Okay, yeah. You report back and see if he'll give us a little hello.
He wanted to come, but
I know he did. Hong, you said something really meaningful in an article recently, which was, quote, "It's a lot harder to be the friend who sticks around and watches someone who's suffering and isn't making good choices than being the person who leaves." And it's funny, this performance reminded me of, here we go. We're actually calling.
You're like you're in an undershirt. Show everyone.
Hey, Brendan.
It's a PGA screening. They're all a bunch of producers. What do you have to say to the producers?
Thanks for being here tonight. Saw the whale.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you.
How you feeling? You feeling okay?
Yeah, it was better.
Okay, good. All right, we'll call you later. Say goodbye.
Bye, Brendan. That was sweet. Thank you.
Sorry,
It's
pulled
so
him out of
sweet.
bed.
When I was watching your performance, I thought of Leaving Las Vegas, actually, Elizabeth Shue's gorgeous work in that movie. And I wondered if you had any other sort of cinematic touchstones or something you listened to or anything you read to try to channel that kind of energy, because I feel like they're really on par with each other. Just stunning, both of them.
Oh gosh, thank you for that very kind comparison. But no, I don't. I have such a short memory in terms of films, of watching things and then immediately forgetting them, which makes rewatching things really fun.
Do you know which movies you've been in? Because they're all really good.
I think it was just about of being there with Brendan. We had that 3-week rehearsal period, and initially I found it really restrictive because it seemed like it was all about blocking, and then I figured out, I can just ignore Darren, and once I did that,
Whatever you did worked really well.
once I did that and just really zeroed in with Brendan and creating that relationship and that history, it just it was just so much fun. We got to really explore and play because I knew that was the period of time that we would get to do that, not really on set because it was prohibitive. It was really inspiring for me as an actor to get to watch the transformation that Brendan went through from that very first table read. And when you see somebody working that hard, it makes you want to work hard. It makes you want to sit up straight and deliver as well. So it was just so wonderful and miraculous to be doing that film after COVID, the pandemic lifted, and we were able to get together and do that, because wasn't that really strange when the industry shut down? And who would have thought that it would be this really small, intimate movie that we would get to do after everything got back up and running. But thank you. I love Liz. I love how complicated she is. I love how tricky that relationship is. A lot of people say that she's an enabler, but I think it's so true to life. When you really love somebody, you have to bend for them, and you do all sorts of things. If it's easy for you to say no to them or to walk away because they're not living their lives the way you think that they should, then that means that relationship wasn't very profound to begin with.
But Hong taught us a lot about the character, which surprised us. There was that, it didn't happen in rehearsal, but there was the scene when he nearly chokes to death and she actually hits him. And I'll never forget that moment. I was like, oh, hold on one second. And I was like, ran out to Sam. I was like, Sam, what the fuck was that? Can we do that? Can we allow that? And we had like a long conversation about it because it was right. It wasn't in the script. And it wasn't, no, I don't think any other actor had ever done that in the moments yet. But it was completely right. It was like, yes, of course, there's this incredible frustration that anyone who's been a caregiver knows that feeling of just that pain. But to actually surface it and do it and have the balls to like throw her character, or like how most actors want to protect their characters from doing something so messed up under the bus, was just so brave. And then we were like, no, I think it's right. I remember you going, yeah, I think it's right. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. And then we went back and she wouldn't do another take like that. So that's the one that she gave us.
Good thing you were rolling, right?
Yeah. No, we were rolling, and it's in the film. But it's the other thing that was just great about Hong is it, like every take would go off in a different direction that was truthful to the material. So it was a nightmare for the editor, but just absolutely delicious to witness on set and to have all these different options to bring back to the editing room. But the other thing it talks about is just the quality of the writing, which was, it's stunning to me because right before we went up to do this, there's a library in New York at Lincoln Center that films every production in New York City, and they had a copy of the production I saw 10 years earlier, and it had been 10 years since I had seen it. So I was like, you know what, I better look at it just to see if maybe I forced you to cut a line, or maybe there was something in the blocking that I could learn. I didn't really get that much out of it because it was very much a play, but what was so interesting is the casting was so different. And the way the actor played Charlie in the play was really kind of gruff and grouchy and just a whole different kind of perception than what Brendan ended up bringing. But it still worked emotionally, which is, I think, why Sam's play will be performed for the rest of our lives in different places in the world, because there's so much depth to it that so many actors can find different kind of avenues of how they want to sort of float through it.
So universal too, very much. I have one last question, and then we'll have time for maybe 2 audience questions. So the specter of Herman Melville sort of hangs over this piece, and I have distinct memories of having to suffer through reading that book in high school.
Oh, you're so wrong.
No, but now I appreciate it.
Okay,
now I appreciate it. When I was 17, it was a little dense. But I never forgot about Ahab, and I never forgot about the white whale, and I never forgot about what that white whale means. So I wanted to ask each of you, what was your respective white whale that you were chasing in making this film? Maybe start with Samuel.
Wait, I mean, yeah.
I'm surprised no one's asked that. It's just hanging there.
Very entertaining.
Boy,
I like the question about what is the white whale in the text, which we've talked a lot about. But don't answer that. Answer her.
Oh, answer my question, please.
I mean, I guess like it's hard because I there's so much going on in Moby Dick, so it's like that metaphor of like what's your white whale has been kind of like, but I mean, I encountered Moby Dick when I was in the 8th grade, like Ellie, and I didn't really understand it, but I was obsessed with it. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just like chasing my white whale is like chasing the largeness of that literary work and the mystery and profundity of that literary work through the lens of this very unlikely lens of the story, you know.
And Hong, what would your white whale be?
I guess from the actor's perspective, it's just about having that perfect take, which doesn't really exist. Darren will disagree. He's like, no, there is.
She did a few.
Well, I think for me, as I'm getting more opportunities to work on really ambitious and challenging material, for me, it's just about letting go and not white-knuckling everything, which is what I think I was doing early on, is, you know, trying to nail that audition or trying to nail that scene or that take. Right now, it's just about enjoying the process and enjoying watching how the director works with different actors and what the actor my scene partner is doing and just enjoying that whole process and not being so attached to the end result. And I think that's been really freeing for me.
That's great. I like that. Okay, Darren. I guess what wasn't
I
a
forgot
white
the
whale?
I get the whole like chasing the perfect moment that Hong's talking about. I think for me, there was always a mystery to the text. It was the most complicated text I worked with. And I was constantly learning what it was about and kind of chasing to understand it. And even 3 days ago, the last time I saw it, which would probably be the last time I watch it, was at the New York premiere. I was still kind of learning new things about the text. So, you know, I think I finally did catch the white whale by the end, but it took a long time to really... I knew that there was something really powerful in the material, but it took a long time to figure out what it was.
Well, thank you. That's a great answer. Okay, we have time for a couple questions. Anybody nearby? Okay, I saw that gentleman's hand first on the end.
Just curious about why you decided to do 4:3.
Yeah, the aspect ratio. It was about look. I think widescreen is great for Sergio Leone movie when there's incredible landscape. this really wasn't about the landscape. It was about the actors and the performers and the performances. And the 4-3 is more shaped like a human's head versus a long, wide rectangle. So it just made sense to me because that was the landscape, was the performance and the words. So I just thought it would be more captivating to do that. Of course, like over the shoulder shots, we get more tricky because it's really hard to get a shoulder and a head in and a person in, but you work with what you can get.
Great question, thank you. Sir, in the middle?
I'll make it quick, but why was there a dialect coach?
Probably for Sam Morton, right? Was that what it was about?
It was actually, so I grew up in Idaho, all these characters from Idaho. And
Timonic.
yeah, he actually, I don't know if I told you this, but he talked to my dad for like an hour. Because my dad's like a real Idaho guy. And like, but it was just, it was like very subtle, but there are some very subtle Idaho things that they just wanted to locate. Maybe he worked with Sam too, I don't know.
I know he worked with Sam, but probably she does a great American accent. So, but it wasn't just with that. He coached all of the actors a bit on just giving them a few tips on it.
Lastly, amazing listening to you and dismantle and diffuse the situation with William Friedkin at the WGA during Mother. It was a masterclass in how to diffuse discourse. Just wanted to say.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question. Okay, let's do second row here. Yeah. Yes. First hand I saw.
I'm just curious, what do all of you want people to take from the movie?
I think it's easy to answer. I think it's that thing when everyone judges a book by their cover, or at least most people do. And people living with obesity are so quickly dismissed. After the premiere, a group of doctors that were invited came up to me and they were like, "We're guilty," and it's true. It's like a completely documented reality that people living with obesity do not get the same medical care that other people do. And they were just like, "Oh, we met, now we know someone, we know Charlie." So it's changed us, and that was really powerful for me, getting that. But really, I think, when's the last time you got to cry with a bunch of people? And that's like a great thing that film has sort of forgotten it can do. And also laugh. Really some of the great moments in the writing is going from laughing to like a complete U-turn to feeling awful for him. And those types of spins are just rare experience. So my mentor, Stuart Rosenberg, always said, you got to make them laugh, cry, or scare the shit out of them. So we do the first two. No scary stuff.
Yeah, I think it's funny because when I first wrote this play, one of the reasons I wanted to write it, and one of the reasons I kind of made the decision to write these very earnest plays that kind of wear their hearts firmly on their sleeves, is because I was just done with cynicism, and I was just like, it masquerades as intelligence, it masquerades as sophistication, I find it boring and intellectually bankrupt. Thank you. And maybe that makes me a Pollyanna or whatever, but like, I just think
you're so unfun.
But I think like having faith in other people is worth it, and I think, but the complicating factor about that is, having faith in something is easy if you have like a received set of like cultural principles like religion or other organizations or sets of cultural principles that organize your life in kind of a dogmatic way and tell you what to believe and how you believe it. It's kind of easy to have faith within the confines of that. But if you live in the gray, like a lot of us do, without those like really strict dogmatic, prescriptions of what to believe and how to believe it, it's hard to figure out like, what is it to be human? Because like, let's be honest, like suffering, it's kind of a narrative lie that we're all proffered, that this lie of like suffering leads to reward. A lot of the times it doesn't. Like it just doesn't. And so if you're gonna have faith in other people, I think that's a really hard project. That's deeply, deeply complicated. And I think that's what I'm trying to reflect in the film. But for me, and especially now, I became a dad 5 years ago. My husband and I adopted a baby, and like I don't have the luxury of being cynical anymore. So So I would hope that, sorry, this is a long road of saying, I would hope that people take away from this film a sense of like, having faith in other people is hard, but it's a worthwhile endeavor.
No, I mean, I just look at this movie as a way to remind myself to try really hard to let the people that I love know that I love them. I became a mother right before reading the script. My daughter was 8 weeks old when I left to go work on this movie. She came with. I didn't leave her at home. But I was just so moved and heartbroken by Charlie's story of loving his daughter so much and not being the parent that he wanted to be and wished he could be, and only in his final days was trying desperately to let her know that she was loved and to make sure that she was okay and that she would value human connection and not give up on herself. So I really am allergic to saying, like, this is what I want an audience to take away from something, but I guess that would be it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A of The Whale. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more of these in the future. It is award season, so we have lots more to come.